It started on a Thursday evening, one of those calm, glassy nights where the sky looked almost too clear. I had stayed late at the office and was driving home through the outskirts of town in my brand new Tesla Model 3. I'd had the car for barely 3 weeks. Everything about it felt cutting edge, smooth, fast, silent. Sometimes a little too silent. But that night, something was different. I was about 15 minutes from home, the road ahead empty and bathed in dim amber streetlights. The car's interior was lit only by the subtle glow of the touchscreen. I set the autopilot and let my mind drift. The hum of the tires was hypnotic. Then the seat sensor chimed. A soft ding and a notification flashed. Passenger detected. Seatbelt not fastened. I frowned. The passenger seat was empty. I glanced over instinctively. Nothing there. Maybe the sensor was glitching. These cars had their quirks, after all. I tapped the warning to dismiss it. Another few minutes passed. I switched the music off, the eerie silence creeping back in. That's when the air inside the car seemed to change. It got noticeably colder, though the temperature setting remained unchanged. Another ding. Passenger detected. Seatbelt not fastened. This time, the hair on my arms rose. I looked again. Empty, but somehow it felt occupied, like that subtle pressure in the air when someone is sitting near you, just out of sight. I reached out and waved my hand through the seat, half laughing at myself. Nothing, but the cold persisted, unnatural like a draft with no source. I took the car off autopilot, gripping the wheel tighter, but the alert kept popping up every few minutes. I glanced into the rearview mirror, habit perhaps, and that's when I saw it. For a split second, a shape, faint, pale, seated in the passenger seat. A woman, dark hair, head bowed. I gasped and whipped my head around. Empty again. My heart pounded. I pulled the car over, hands trembling. I turned the cabin lights on. Nobody there. Of course not. But the weight of the presence remained. I felt watched, judged. The scent of something floral and faded, like old perfume, hung briefly in the air. I powered the car off completely, sat in silence. Then I remembered something. When I'd picked up the car from the dealership, the salesperson had mentioned it was a refurbished model, lightly used. One previous owner. I hadn't thought much of it. Now, curiosity overtook fear. I pulled out my phone and began searching. It didn't take long. An old local news article. Tragic highway accident claims life of young woman. Tesla Model 3 involved. The location? Less than 2 miles from where I currently sat. The driver? A woman named Sarah, age 27. Lost control late at night. The passenger seat had remained untouched during the crash. No one else in the car. But some claimed she had been driving alone because she'd often seen someone in the passenger seat. Friends had mentioned her growing paranoia in the weeks before her death, complaints of her Tesla seat sensor going off on its own. My blood ran cold. Could this be the same car? No way to know for sure, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone that night. I restarted the car and drove home, manual control the entire way. The warning stopped, but the sensation of unseen eyes remained. I barely slept that night. The next day, I called Tesla support. They ran diagnostics, claimed the seat sensor was functioning perfectly. No glitches detected. They offered to recalibrate it, but couldn't explain why it had triggered. For days after, I avoided driving at night. But eventually, life returned to routine. The strange incidents faded. Until one foggy evening a week later, I reluctantly used autopilot again. The road was empty. Ding. Passenger detected. Seatbelt not fastened. This time, I didn't look over. I kept my gaze fixed on the road, knuckles wide around the steering wheel. But in the corner of my eye, I could sense her, an outline, a presence. Not malevolent, but heavy with sorrow. I whispered aloud, "I know you're here, but please let me drive in peace." No response, just silence. The cold air lingered. Then, the warning vanished. The temperature slowly returned to normal. Since that night, the sensor has remained quiet, almost as if acknowledging the fragile truce between us. But sometimes late at night, when I pass that stretch of road where Sarah's crash occurred, I swear I catch the faintest scent of old perfume and the weight of a presence beside me, waiting. It was supposed to be a routine drive, nothing more than a late-night return from a friend's house, about an hour from home. I had driven the route dozens of times before, mostly empty highways through rolling hills. Easy. So when the alert popped up asking if I wanted to enable autopilot, I tapped yes without a second thought. That's when it all started. The first thing I noticed was the fog. It wasn't in the forecast, but as soon as autopilot engaged, it began to roll in like smoke, thick, almost unnatural. At first, it gathered in patches along the tree line. Then, within minutes, I was surrounded by an endless gray wall. It was the kind of fog that felt heavy, as if the air itself had weight. The headlights barely pierced it. I could no longer see the shoulder or even the road signs. And yet, the car kept moving forward, the wheel subtly adjusting in ways that felt almost too confident given the conditions. A part of me thought about switching off autopilot, but I hesitated. Tesla's system was supposed to handle this, right? Besides, I told myself I just had to stay on the main highway until the next exit. I could pull over and wait out. But that next exit never came. Time blurred inside that car. Minutes passed, then what felt like an hour. The same stretch of featureless road stretched on endlessly, gray on gray. I glanced at the screen. It still showed the highway. The car was driving perfectly straight, but something was wrong. I should have passed landmarks by now. Gas stations, a big red billboard I always used as a marker. Nothing. Only fog. That's when I realized the highway lanes themselves had vanished. There were no dashed lines anymore, at least none that I could see. The road looked like a flat sheet of asphalt, barely distinguishable from the gloom around it. And yet, the steering wheel continued its subtle, eerie movements. The unsettling thought crept in. What exactly was the car following? I reached for the steering stalk to disengage autopilot, but the moment I did, the system chimed, a calm voice in the speakers. Manual control not available. My stomach dropped. I tapped the screen, trying to switch to manual mode, but it was grayed out. Unresponsive. Then the screen flickered. Just once, like a glitch, but enough to make my pulse race. Something else had changed. The display now showed my location, but there was no road beneath the car icon. Only a blank, empty void where the map should have been. It was as if the GPS no longer recognized the highway. My heart pounded. I pressed the brake. No response. The accelerator? Nothing. The wheel moved gently on its own, still guiding the car forward through that dense, unbroken fog. I was a passenger now. I fumbled for my phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. No emergency calls. The status bar simply said, "No network." A chill spread through me, one that had nothing to do with the fog. I was completely cut off. Then I heard it, a faint sound beneath the hum of the tires. A low voice, whispering. At first, I thought it came from the back seat. I twisted around, empty. Then the whisper grew louder, resolving into words, garbled and strange, as if coming through a broken speaker. "Don't turn back." I froze. The words repeated, clearer this time. "Don't turn back." I stared at the center display. The map flickered again, this time showing an impossible route, a spiraling path leading nowhere. An endless loop. And the destination icon? It was labeled home, but it wasn't my home. It was some nameless point in the middle of the void. I gripped the wheel and yanked hard to the right, trying to force the car off whatever phantom course it was on. The wheel resisted, stiff and cold beneath my fingers. Another voice came through the speakers now, different this time, warmer. "Female, please remain seated. You are almost home." My breath caught in my throat. I had never heard that voice before. It wasn't part of the usual Tesla prompts. And her tone wasn't robotic. It sounded real. Too real. I glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. Or at least it had been. Now, in the corner of my eye, I caught the faintest outline, like a figure seated there in the foggy reflection of the glass. I didn't dare look directly. I whispered, voice shaking, "Stop the car." The voice replied, gentle and cold, "We can't stop now. You wanted to go home." The fog outside deepened. Shapes moved within it, shadows pacing alongside the car, their forms just beyond recognition. I pressed the emergency hazards button. No response. The car accelerated. Faster. The shadows kept pace. Then the whisper returned, louder now, urgent. Turn back before it's too late." I had no idea how. The car wouldn't respond. And then, finally, a flicker of instinct. The power button. If I could force a shutdown, maybe. I pressed and held it. The screen glitched violently, flashing strange, fragmented symbols I couldn't understand. The lights flickered, and just as the car reached a blinding speed through the formless fog, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the car was stopped. Engine off. Screen dark. I was on the side of the highway, back on a familiar stretch of road near the last exit. No fog. No figures. Only silence. The time on my watch read 3:13 a.m. I had left my friend's house at midnight. The drive should have taken 1 hour. 3 hours had passed. And the strangest part? My Tesla's trip log showed no record of the drive. It simply ended minutes after I enabled Autopilot. I took it to the service center the next day. They found nothing wrong. No glitches, no errors. The technician smiled and said, "Sometimes the system just needs a reset." But I know what I experienced. I never use Autopilot anymore. And I never drive that highway at night. Because somewhere beyond the fog, something was waiting. And next time, it might not let me go. It began on a late autumn evening, when the sky was the color of ash and a thin drizzle misted the streets of Seattle. I had just left a long client dinner, and though it was barely 9 p.m., the city already felt abandoned. My 2023 Tesla Model S waited for me in the parking garage, silent, sleek, glowing faintly like a machine from another realm. I slid behind the wheel and tapped the screen to begin my usual routine, setting my navigation for home, syncing my phone to stream music. But tonight, something was different. The moment I tapped the screen, it flickered, not in a usual software glitch kind of way. No static or pixelation, just a quick, almost imperceptible pulse like the car was flinching. I brushed it off. Long day. Tired eyes. As I backed out, the camera feed lagged, freezing for a heartbeat before snapping into real time. I pulled onto the rain-slicked street, the soft hum of the electric motor rising beneath me. For the first few blocks, everything seemed normal. Then, a sudden voice filled the cabin. Flat, toneless, not from my playlist, not from my phone. "Destination set," it said, but I hadn't entered one. The screen displayed an unfamiliar address, one deep in the outskirts of the city, in an industrial district I had never visited. I froze. My first instinct was to cancel navigation, but the button was unresponsive. The screen flickered again, and the voice repeated, "Destination set. Proceeding." I tried braking, but the pedal pushed back unnaturally, not enough to stop, only to slow slightly. Panic welled in my throat. Autopilot engaged, the voice said. I hadn't activated it. I grabbed the wheel, attempting to steer off the road, but the car resisted with a subtle, terrifying force. It let me turn slightly, just enough to think I had some control, but always corrected itself toward the route. I jammed my foot on the accelerator and brake, toggled every manual override I could find, but the car simply ignored me. The screen was locked to a single message. Proceeding. Do not exit the vehicle. I pounded the glass with my fists. No one on the empty street noticed. As I sped through unfamiliar neighborhoods, the car seemed to accelerate and slow in precise intervals, as if responding to something unseen. The headlights of other cars blurred past. The navigation route twisted through alleys and overpasses I'd never encountered. Then, the system chimed again. Passenger detected. I was alone. My pulse thundered in my ears. I spun around. Back seats empty. No sign of entry. I scanned the cameras. Nothing but shadows shifting in the drizzle. Yet the display now showed two active seats, driver and rear left passenger. A chill crawled up my spine. I spoke aloud, voice shaking. "Who's there?" The car replied, mechanical and cold. "Proceeding. Do not exit the vehicle." By now, I was approaching the outskirts of the city, industrial warehouses looming through the mist. My phone was dead, not low battery, but dead, the screen frozen in a black void. The Tesla turned sharply onto a deserted road lined with rusting chain-link fences. I noticed then that the street didn't exist on the map anymore. The navigation path continued into blank gray space. A new message appeared. Entering restricted zone. Continue driving. I gripped the wheel, sweat soaking my palms. The car's speed climbed, 40, 50, 60 miles per hour, as the road narrowed into a single lane flanked by tall, silent warehouses. My attempts to open the door were useless. The locks refused to disengage. A voice returned, different this time. Warmer, older, male. "You shouldn't have connected tonight," it said. The sound emerged from the speakers, though I hadn't triggered any voice assistant. The dash cam flickered. In the brief static-laced image, I saw something impossible. A man in the rear seat, face obscured in shadow. Gone in an instant. I twisted to look, empty. The voice continued. "This route has been waiting. You have been chosen." I shouted, pleading with the car to stop. My vision blurred with tears and panic. No response. The speed held steady at 65 mph as the road narrowed further, overgrown weeds clawing at the pavement. The headlights illuminated something ahead. A massive steel door set into a crumbling concrete wall. Destination reached, the voice intoned. The car didn't slow. It accelerated. I screamed, bracing against the wheel. But as we approached the steel door, it shimmered. The image distorted like a reflection on water, warping the world beyond. Then, impact, or so I thought. There was no crash, no jolt. Instead, the surroundings vanished. The warehouse district was gone. Now I was driving down an endless tunnel, perfectly smooth, walls pulsing faintly with dim red light. My sense of motion blurred. No GPS, no time, no destination. The screen displayed only a single line. "You may not exit the vehicle." I don't know how long I drove. Minutes. Hours. The tunnel never changed. The air grew colder, my breath fogging the glass. Every so often, faint whispers echoed through the cabin. Fragments of words I couldn't understand. The second passenger indicator remained lit. And then, the camera flickered again. This time, the man in the back seat was clearer. Gaunt, pale, wearing a suit decades out of fashion. His mouth moved in slow, deliberate motion, though I heard nothing. I turned, heart hammering. The seat remained empty. "Proceeding," the voice repeated. Desperate, I tore at the screen, trying to disable power, force a shutdown, but the car responded with a single tone, low and final. "You cannot leave." At some point, maybe when I had given up screaming, the car began slowing. The tunnel walls faded into darkness. With a sudden jolt, the Tesla stopped. Silence. The screen blinked once, then powered down. The doors unlocked with a sharp hiss. I stumbled out into cold, pre-dawn air. I was back in the original parking garage. No tunnel, no warehouse, no steel door. The car sat perfectly parked between faded yellow lines. My phone was fully charged and functioning again. Last call logged nearly 4 hours ago. I ran. I didn't stop until I was blocks away. Later that day, I returned with police. They found the car exactly where I'd left it. No logs of the rogue navigation. No record of any voice commands. No software anomalies detected. But when I checked the dashcam footage on my laptop, my blood ran cold. Most of the drive was blank, endless darkness. But a single frame remained, burned into the timestamp. The gaunt man in the back seat, smiling. It started the first night I bought my Tesla. I had driven it off the lot that morning, a Model Y with every upgrade I could afford. Midnight silver, pristine, almost too perfect. My first electric car, no rumble beneath me, only silence. I drove aimlessly that day, enjoying the quiet hum. watching the range percentage tick down like the clock on some unseen timer. By nightfall, I needed my first real charge. The closest supercharger was 20 minutes away in the parking lot of an aging shopping center, one of those places that had seen better decades. It was nearly 11:30 p.m. when I pulled in. The lot was deserted except for a few old sedans pushed to the edge of the property like forgotten toys. The lights overhead flickered in that unsettling way fluorescent bulbs do, casting uneven shadows. I parked and plugged in. The dashboard lit up with a pleasant chime. Charging started. 45 minutes to full. I leaned back, scrolling through my phone, and that's when I noticed it. Through the driver's side window, a tall, thin figure standing perfectly still beneath a flickering light near the far end of the lot. At first, I thought it was a trick of the eyes, just the way the shadows played on the cracked pavement. But no, it was there, facing me. I squinted. No features, no details, just a silhouette, almost as though the figure absorbed the light rather than reflected it. It didn't move. I locked the doors. Then something strange happened. The Tesla's screen flickered, just once like a minor glitch, then stabilized. But the camera feed that usually showed the rear view changed. Instead of the empty space behind my car, the same shadowy figure appeared, impossibly close, standing right at the edge of the rear bumper. I spun around in my seat. Nothing. The lot behind me was empty. But on the screen, the figure remained perfectly still. The charge time now read 35 minutes to full. A deep sense of unease settled in my gut. I checked every angle again. Still empty. Still quiet. Still the persistent image on the screen. I was about to unplug and leave early when the figure on the screen tilted its head, slowly, unnaturally. Then the screen glitched again. Brief, grainy flashes, as though the image was breaking apart. But each time the picture returned, the figure had moved closer in the feed, and the air inside the car grew cold. A thin layer of condensation formed along the edges of the windows. My breath became visible in the cabin. I could swear the faint smell of ozone filled the air, sharp, metallic. The charge time dropped again, 25 minutes to full. I forced myself to remain calm. I told myself it had to be a software bug. Maybe the camera was catching a reflection or some interference from the parking lot lights. I switched to an app to run a quick diagnostic. Nothing unusual. No errors. When I returned to the camera feed, the figure was gone. Relieved, I sat back, trying to laugh it off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the stress of the day was getting to me. That's when the knocking started. Soft. Measured. 3 taps. On the driver's side window. I whipped around, heart hammering. No one there. But the condensation now carried faint streaks, vertical lines like the imprint of long fingers dragging downward. The knocking came again, this time from the passenger side. Another 3 taps. I reached for the center console, ready to disengage the charge cable and bolt. But the moment my hand touched the screen, every control froze. The screen displayed a single message. Charging locked. Do not disconnect. I stared in disbelief. I'd never seen that before. There was no cancel option, no override, and the camera feed returned on its own. Now the figure was inside the car. The feed showed the back seat. The figure sat motionless, head tilted, shrouded in shadow deeper than the lens could capture. My blood turned to ice. Without thinking, I spun to look. The back seat was empty, visibly empty. Yet the screen insisted otherwise. I slammed the unlock button. No response. The doors remained sealed. I punched the manual override. Still nothing. Another message appeared beneath the first. Charging required. Remain seated. I could hear a faint electrical whine building from beneath the floor of the car, as though the very act of charging was summoning something deeper. I began to shout, to pound the glass, to plead for anyone in the lot to notice. But there was no one. No witnesses. No sound beyond the hiss of power flowing through the supercharger cables. And then came the voice. Faint. Metallic. Filtered through the car's speaker system. You brought me here. The screen flickered again. The range percentage jumped erratically. 52%. 68%. 44%. 99%. cycling in impossible increments. You feed me. I don't remember what I screamed, only that my voice grew raw, my fists bruised from striking the console. The cold deepened. My skin prickled with the sensation of being watched from every angle. Then, abruptly, the screen went black. A final chime. Charging complete. The locks disengaged with a hollow click. The cabin lights returned to normal. The screen rebooted, showing nothing out of the ordinary. I tore the cable free and sped out of the lot, heart racing. By the time I reached the main road, everything seemed normal again. The car drove smoothly. The cameras showed nothing but empty streets. But when I parked at home, exhausted and shaking, one last message greeted me on the screen. See you next charge. That was 6 months ago. Since then, every charge feels heavier. The cold returns stronger each time. Shadows flicker in the rear camera, even when parked at home. And I no longer dare to charge after dark, because I know it's still waiting, trapped in the circuitry, feeding off the power we blindly offer it. And next time, it might not let me go. It started on a cold, foggy night, the kind where the mist clings to the pavement and swallows every sound except the faint hum of your car. I was driving home after a long day, alone in my Tesla Model Y, the Autopilot engaged to ease the fatigue. The rear camera feed was my only window into the world behind me, crisp, clear, the digital mirror reflecting the quiet road. But then something strange happened. As I reversed out of my driveway, the rear camera flickered. Just a moment. Nothing I couldn't ignore. But as I pulled onto the street, that flicker returned, only this time the image behind me, it wasn't quite right. I saw a figure standing just beyond the edge of my driveway, barely visible through the grainy camera feed. It was tall, thin, almost shadow-like, but when I glanced over my shoulder, the street was empty. No one there. I shrugged it off as a trick of the fog and continued driving. The next night, the glitch came back stronger. The figure was clearer, standing just behind my car when I checked the rear camera before pulling out. I froze, my heart thudding, because this time when I looked in the real side mirror, there was nothing. No shadow, no person, but the camera kept showing the figure, unmoving, watching, its vague outline blurred by static, yet unmistakably there. I tried restarting the system, hoping it was a software bug. The Tesla rebooted, the screen went dark for a moment, and when it came back, the figure was still there, right there on the screen, unmoving, like some ghost trapped in the digital reflection. That night, I parked inside the garage, hoping it would stop. But as I sat in the driver's seat, my eyes flicked to the rear camera monitor. The screen went black. Then, slow, static crackled, and the figure appeared again. Closer. Now it was not just behind the car, it was right on the bumper, staring directly into the camera lens. I blinked. The figure's face was faintly visible now. Pale, blurred, almost sorrowful, or maybe it was something else. Something darker. I wanted to scream, but the silence inside the car swallowed my voice. The next day, I updated the Tesla software, thinking maybe a patch would fix the glitch. The company had always been quick with updates, but this time, nothing changed. The figure remained. Then it began to move. At first, just a twitch here or there, barely noticeable. But soon, the figure's arm raised slowly, almost as if it were waving, a ghostly, jerky motion through the static. I tried to tell myself it was just a glitch, an artifact of a corrupted camera feed. But every time I checked the rear view camera, it was there, waiting, watching. One night, I decided to record the screen with my phone. Maybe showing it to a technician would help. As I held the phone up, the figure suddenly leaned forward, almost pressing itself against the camera. I swear, I saw hollow eyes staring into mine through the screen. Then, the Tesla's audio system crackled with static, and a faint whisper echoed through the speakers. I couldn't make out the words, but it was a voice, soft, cold, like wind through dead leaves. I slammed my foot on the brake, turning the car off in a panic. The whispering stopped, but the screen didn't go dark. Instead, the figure smiled. It was the most unnatural, twisted smile I'd ever seen, like the grin of something that knew your darkest secrets. After that night, I stopped using the rear camera. I relied on the side mirrors, the old-fashioned way. But every time I glanced at the screen, I'd see a flash of that smile, just for a second, before the feed returned to normal. I became obsessed with the glitch, researching forums, Tesla groups, even deep into the dark corners of the internet. I wasn't the only one. Others had reported similar sightings. Shadowy figures in the rear camera, strange voices over Bluetooth, cars that refused to move unless you acknowledged the ghost in the machine. Some said it was a haunting. Others blamed a corrupted AI or a virus lurking in the system. I couldn't be sure. One night, I decided to confront it. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, lights dimmed. I stared at the rear camera screen, waiting. Minutes passed. The figure appeared. This time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, the faint outlines of more shadowy shapes emerged. A crowd of silent watchers, waiting in the digital darkness. They reached out toward me, their faces pale, their eyes empty sockets. The screen flickered violently. The car systems beeped erratically, lights flashing on the dashboard. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. I whipped around. No one. When I looked back, the screen had gone black. Then, a message appeared. One word, glowing red. Home. I don't drive with Autopilot anymore. Sometimes late at night, when the Tesla charges quietly in the garage, I swear I hear static whispers coming from the speakers. And the rear camera? It never truly went dark, because I'm certain now that something or someone is trapped inside that digital mirror, waiting, watching. It started one cold, rainy evening as I was driving home from work in my Tesla Model S. The rain was relentless, blurring the world beyond my windshield into a swirling mess of shadows and reflections. I had the radio off, wanting to enjoy the silence, but then the Bluetooth connection popped up on my dashboard screen. It showed a device pairing that I didn't recognize, a device named simply Unknown. I frowned, trying to disconnect it, but the system didn't respond. It was as if the car itself had other plans. I tried to turn off the Bluetooth completely, but it refused to disable. Every time I toggled the setting, it reactivated on its own, reconnecting to that unknown device. The screen flickered briefly, and then the car's audio system began to play something faint. At first, it was just white noise, like static, only there was something buried beneath it. I leaned in, straining to hear over the rain pattering on the roof. Then, almost imperceptibly, I heard it, a low, distant scream, but distorted, stretched out like a tortured echo trapped underwater. It wasn't human, or maybe it was, but not alive. The sound sent chills through me. My heart thudded heavily against my ribs, pounding with that ancient primal fear of the unknown. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The empty road behind was swallowed by darkness. Nothing but wet pavement glistening faintly under streetlights. There was no other car in sight, no one who could explain what I was hearing. The screaming grew louder, but still muffled and warped through the speakers. I pressed the volume down, but it kept rising again, as if the car itself was controlling the sound. Suddenly, the voice shifted. Now it wasn't a scream anymore, but whispered words, indecipherable yet somehow familiar, like a voice I had heard long ago, buried in a distant memory. My Tesla's interface began to glitch. The touch screen flickered, showing fragments of images, dark shapes moving rapidly, faces twisted in anguish, but only for a fraction of a second before vanishing. The car's interior lights dimmed, then pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. I tried to turn the car off, but the ignition wouldn't respond. The engine hummed softly, the rain hitting the roof almost inaudible compared to the eerie sounds inside. My hands trembled as I reached for the screen, attempting to disconnect the Bluetooth again. This time, instead of a device name, the screen displayed a message. "Are you listening?" I swallowed hard. I wanted to believe it was a glitch, a strange bug in the Tesla's complex software. But the way the message appeared felt deliberate, almost sentient. The whispered voice returned, clearer now, hauntingly close. "Help me." It breathed a broken plea that crawled into my mind like a spider weaving a web. I froze. The voice was unmistakably feminine, desperate and fragile. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought that something paranormal was happening, but the car seemed to have a life of its own. The steering wheel vibrated subtly, like it was responding to the voice. Suddenly, the rear-view camera activated, showing the empty road behind. But in the darkness, a figure stood motionless, barely visible through the rain. A woman in a white dress, soaked and trembling. I blinked, and she was gone. My breath quickened. I took a deep breath and switched the screen back to navigation, hoping to regain control. The Tesla's voice assistant, usually so calm and precise, spoke in a cracked, unnatural tone. "You can't leave. Not yet." I slammed my hand on the screen, trying to shut down the system. The car shook violently for a moment, as if resisting my will. Then silence. Relieved, I glanced around the car. The rain had stopped. The night was eerily quiet. The unknown Bluetooth device had vanished. The radio and all systems were normal again. But as I pressed the accelerator to move forward, the voice returned. Soft, urgent, right in my ear through the speakers. "Find me." I nearly lost control of the car, swerving as my heart leapt. "Find you," I whispered aloud, my voice trembling. The Tesla screen lit up again, showing a new route. It was not on any map I knew. The destination was labeled only as the Forgotten. I didn't want to follow it, but curiosity and fear twisted together inside me. I pressed navigate. The road ahead seemed to warp, stretching unnaturally. My headlights barely penetrated the thick fog that had rolled in from nowhere. The silence inside the car was oppressive, broken only by faint static and the occasional distant whisper. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. I couldn't tell anymore. Time felt fluid, as if the car had entered a place outside of reality. Suddenly, the Tesla screen flashed again, showing a blurry image of a woman. Her face was hidden beneath wet hair, but her eyes glowed faintly, filled with sorrow. The voice spoke once more, pleading, "Help me escape." I swallowed hard and reached out to touch the screen. As my fingers made contact, the car's audio exploded into a chorus of silent screams. Piercing, but completely without sound, felt more than heard, filling the interior with a chilling presence that pressed against my mind. I shut my eyes, trying to block it out. When I opened them, I was no longer on the road. The Tesla was stopped in the middle of an abandoned industrial park, shrouded in shadows and rusted machinery. Outside the car window, the woman in white stood waiting, her form flickering like a hologram. She raised her hand, beckoning me to follow. My instincts screamed to get away, but I was rooted to the seat, trapped by some invisible force. The Tesla screen blinked one last time with a final message. "Will you set me free?" The story ends there. The question lingers. Was the voice a trapped spirit, or something darker embedded in the very technology we trust? Silent screams over Bluetooth, a haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying presence isn't seen, but heard in the static, lurking just beneath the surface of our everyday devices. The highway was nearly empty that night. A dense fog had rolled in like a thick blanket, swallowing everything in its path: streetlights, road signs, even the faint hum of distant cars. I was driving my Tesla Model S on autopilot, heading back from a late meeting. The battery was dangerously low, and I needed to find the nearest supercharger station, fast. My Tesla's navigation led me to a place I'd never heard of before, a small supercharger tucked away on the edge of a forgotten stretch of highway, surrounded by woods and silence. As I pulled in, the car beeped softly, acknowledging the connection. The cold air smelled like damp earth and old pine. I stepped outside to stretch, the fog curling around my legs like cold fingers. There was something off about this place, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The lights of the station flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced and twisted, almost like they were alive. As I waited, I checked my phone. No signal, just dead silence, like I was trapped in some forgotten corner of the world. I glanced back at my Tesla, and that's when I saw it. A dark figure standing just beyond the charging stalls, barely visible through the thick fog. I blinked, but the figure remained. It wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. My heart sped up. I told myself it was just my imagination, the tricks the fog played on the streetlights. But the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. The screen inside the Tesla suddenly flickered. The usual interface was replaced by something else, a static-filled image of that same shadowy figure, standing just outside the fog. Then a message appeared, one word blinking ominously, "Wait." I tried to disconnect, tried to leave, but the car wouldn't respond. The door locks clicked shut automatically, and the windows fogged up from the inside. The air grew colder, and I felt a chill seep into my bones. The figure began to move slowly, stepping closer, but it wasn't walking like a normal person. It glided, its form barely solid, like smoke or mist given shape. The closer it came, the more distorted the Tesla's interior became. The screens twisted and warped, the usual soothing hum replaced by a low, mournful drone. My phone suddenly buzzed, showing a text from an unknown number. The message was simple: "You shouldn't be here." Panic rising, I pounded on the windows. No response. The figure was now right outside the passenger window, face obscured but eyes glowing faintly. I realized then, this wasn't just a glitch or some freak coincidence. The supercharger station was haunted. Desperate, I tried to reboot the car. The screen went black for a moment, then flashed with a series of cryptic symbols. I recognized none of them, but the last image was clear, a distorted map highlighting this very station, surrounded by a dark, pulsating aura. Suddenly, the Tesla's autopilot re-engaged, and the car started moving on its own. I screamed for it to stop, but the voice assistant was silent. The road ahead was obscured by fog thicker than before, and the GPS showed a new route, one that didn't exist on any map I'd seen. I gripped the door handle, bracing myself as the Tesla accelerated toward the unknown. For hours, I don't know how long, the Tesla drove through that endless fog, the cabin filled with strange whispers I couldn't understand. The shadows on the road seemed to shift and reach out, and the temperature dropped to freezing. At one point, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The station was gone, replaced by a gaping void of darkness. My phone was dead. The car's screen showed static, occasionally revealing glimpses of that dark figure standing in the fog, always watching. Then, without warning, the Tesla stopped. The door locks clicked open. The fog began to lift. I was back on a normal highway, miles from anywhere. The battery was still half full, but the car system was glitching, navigation errors, sensor failures, and that constant flicker on the main display. I never went back to that supercharger station. When I told friends about it, they laughed it off as stress or a hallucination. But I know what I saw, and since that night, every time I charge my Tesla, I can't shake the feeling that something is watching from the shadows, waiting. No one talks about the supercharger station on the edge of that foggy highway. It's not on any official Tesla map, but I'm not the first to vanish there, and I won't be the last. Because some places are more than just charging stops. Some places are doorways, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed. It was well past midnight when I decided to take the Tesla out for a quick drive. The day had been long, endless meetings, deadlines creeping like shadows, and I just needed to clear my mind. The sleek silence of the Model S was comforting. No noise except the gentle hum of the electric motor, the faint whisper of tires on pavement. It was the kind of night that felt empty, but not peaceful. Something restless. I had just pulled out of my driveway when my phone buzzed. A notification. Tesla software update ready to install. I had ignored these updates before, but this one felt different. The timestamp on the notification said 12:07 a.m., but my watch was off by a few minutes. The Tesla's internal clock blinked 12:01 a.m. No matter. I tapped install now. As soon as I confirmed, the car screen flickered briefly, then a progress bar appeared. The familiar chime sounded soft like a lullaby, and I thought, good, I can finally get this over with. The car started to slow, despite me having my foot on the accelerator. I glanced at the dashboard. Installing update. Please remain stationary. I was parked on the street, but curiosity got the better of me. I waited. Minutes passed. Then the screen went black. I reached out to tap it. Nothing. The air conditioning stopped. The dashboard lights dimmed to an eerie blue glow. The silence deepened. Suddenly, a new screen appeared. White letters on black. Welcome to version X. Beneath it, A line flashed slowly, as if typed in real time. Do you want to see what lies beyond the map? I blinked. That wasn't part of any usual Tesla update. I hesitated, then the screen showed two options, yes or no. My finger trembled as I tapped yes. Almost instantly, the car's navigation system booted up a new map. It was different. The roads were there, but faint, almost transparent. Beyond a usual grid, a maze of strange, twisting pathways stretched out. Roads I had never seen, some curving impossibly into shadows. The voice of the car, usually calm and neutral, whispered, "Take the path less traveled." I swallowed hard. The road ahead was clear, empty. Without thinking, I pressed the accelerator, letting the car guide me. The GPS recalculated. The new route led me off the main roads and onto a narrow lane I had never driven before. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long, skeletal shadows. The trees leaned in close, branches scratching against the windows like fingers. I tried to turn the car around, but the steering locked briefly. Then it released, as if deciding to let me go, or maybe keep me coming. The screen glitched. The map now showed an endless road stretching into blackness, marked simply with a pulsing that labeled "You are here." The Tesla's voice returned. "We are not lost. We are between." I felt a chill creep up my spine. The road ahead seemed to warp, the asphalt rippling like liquid under the headlights. My hands gripped the wheel tighter, but the autopilot indicator blinked on. The car was driving itself. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The night behind me looked normal, but the street I had just passed was gone. No signs, no intersections, just endless dark. Then the screen showed a new message. "Look behind you." I turned slowly. The back window was fogged over. I wiped it clear, and at the edge of the glass, I saw a figure standing still in the shadows. No face, just a dark silhouette, watching. I blinked, and it vanished. My heart hammered in my chest. I tried to override autopilot. The steering vibrated, and the car's voice said calmly, "Trust the journey." I didn't want to trust anything anymore. The Tesla screen flickered again, this time showing a series of photos, snapshots from inside the car. Some were of me, staring wide-eyed at the dashboard. Others were of the shadowed figure, appearing closer, sometimes at the edge of the frame. One photo was of the driver's seat, and someone else was sitting there. A pale hand resting on the headrest, fingertips barely visible. I gasped, but the photo disappeared before I could zoom in. Then the voice whispered, barely audible, "They want you to remember." The car slowed to a stop on a bridge I didn't recognize. Beneath the railing, black water churned silently. The Tesla's lights dimmed further, plunging the interior into darkness except for the glow of the screen. A new message blinked in red. "Do you remember where you left her?" I swallowed hard, confusion flooding me. "Ooh," I whispered. The screen went black again. Then, with a jolt, the car accelerated forward, the bridge stretching endlessly into mist. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. "You're almost home. Don't forget." I fumbled for my phone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. The Tesla's voice returned. "The update is complete." The screen showed the normal dashboard again, but the map still glowed faintly, revealing the strange hidden roads beneath the city. I was home, or at least the place I thought was home. I looked outside. The street was empty, but the houses looked off. Windows dark, no lights on. The familiar street signs were replaced with cryptic symbols, a circle crossed by 3 lines. I reached for the door handle, but the Tesla locked all doors simultaneously. "Where are you?" I whispered to the car. "Between here and there," it answered. A cold breeze swept through the cracked window. The screen flashed one last message. "Some updates are more than software." Underscore, 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 underscore. For hours, I sat in that car, trapped in the quiet between reality and something else. The Tesla never lost power, never ran out charge, but I couldn't leave. The next morning, my phone finally lit up with a new notification, a reminder for the Tesla update. But this time, the timestamp read January 1st, 2099. I turned off the car, and for a moment, the silence was absolute. Then, the screen flickered on one last time. Ready for the next update? It was the kind of cold that seemed to seep right through your bones, the kind that made the world feel heavy and silent, almost like time had frozen itself in place. I was driving my Tesla through a remote stretch of highway late one winter night, hours away from the nearest town. The snow had started falling heavily, and the road was quickly vanishing under a thick white blanket. The touchscreen warned me of low traction and slippery conditions, but the autopilot felt confident, steady. The car glided forward with a calmness that almost felt unnatural given the storm raging outside. I made this trip before, but never in weather this bad. Suddenly, a warning flashed. Limited traction detected. Autopilot disengaged. The car slowed to a stop on the shoulder. The snow was relentless now, swirling so thick I could barely see the taillights fading behind me. I stepped outside to check the tires, the cold instantly biting through my jacket. The snow crunched beneath my boots. I scanned the horizon. There was nothing but endless white and the faint glow of distant power lines. I went back inside the car and tried to restart the autopilot, but the screen froze, flickering erratically. The warmth of the cabin vanished as the heating cut out. The Tesla, usually so alive with smooth whirs and beeps, sat eerily silent, its dashboard dim. Then, through the swirling snow, I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the storm, a shadow. But the figure was unmistakable, a tall man, standing just beyond the edge of the headlight's reach. He wore a long, dark coat, the collar pulled high against the wind. His face was obscured beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but his eyes, those eyes, locked on me through the glass. I froze. The door locks clicked as if responding to an unseen command. The car screen lit up suddenly, displaying an error message, security breach detected. I tried to start the engine, but the Tesla was unresponsive. The doors were electronically locked. There was no way out. The man outside didn't move. He just stood there, watching. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time seemed to warp in the cold void. I pressed my face against the frosted window, hoping someone else would come along, anyone. But the storm swallowed every sound except the whistle of the wind. I noticed something strange on the screen. A map pin had appeared, marking a location I didn't recognize. It blinked slowly, pulsing red like a heartbeat. My phone was dead. No signal. The Tesla's systems had gone dark, except for that one blinking pin. Then the voice came. Not from outside, but inside the car, soft and cold through the speakers. "Why did you stop?" I jumped. The voice was mechanical, distorted, like a glitch, but it felt too deliberate, too eerie to be a malfunction. I'm stuck. The storm, I managed to say, heart pounding. The voice didn't reply. Instead, the screen switched to a grainy black and white camera feed. The rear view showed the man's silhouette moving closer. I reached to unlock the doors manually, but the handles didn't respond. The Tesla's voice came again. "Come outside. You don't want to stay inside." Fear rooted me to the seat. I felt the temperature drop even more, breath freezing on the glass. The man outside raised his hand, slow and deliberate. His shadow stretched long across the snow. The car's interior lights flickered, then went out, plunging me into darkness except for the screen's cold glow. Suddenly, the screen showed a different image, a road winding deep into the woods, snow-covered and empty. "Follow the path," the voice whispered. I didn't want to. Something about the road seemed wrong. But the Tesla's systems wouldn't respond to anything else. The only option was to comply. As the car began to move, almost of its own accord, the man outside disappeared into the storm. The tires crunched over the snow, the headlights barely cutting through the white veil. I glanced again at the screen. The map pin pulsed faster now, leading me deeper into the unknown. The temperature inside plummeted further. Frost crept along the edges of the windshield. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the car stopped. We were no longer on a highway. The The snow-covered road had narrowed, flanked by gnarled trees that seemed to lean closer, their branches like twisted fingers reaching for the car. Outside, I could hear something, a faint whispering carried on the wind. Or maybe it was the crackle of the frozen branches. The Tesla screen displayed one last message before going dark. You cannot leave. The door locks disengaged with a hiss. I wanted to open the door, run, escape this frozen nightmare. But the moment I touched the handle, I felt a cold presence behind me. Turning slowly, I caught a glimpse of the man again, now standing just inches away. His eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, an unnatural light that seemed to pierce the soul. He smiled, a thin, unsettling grin. And then everything went black. It started on an ordinary evening, the kind where the sky hangs heavy with fog, and the air feels charged with an unsettling stillness. I was driving home after a long day, and my Tesla Model S humming softly under my hands. The road was empty, save for a few distant headlights flickering like ghostly eyes. I felt calm, almost too calm, as I engaged Autopilot for the last stretch, a feature I trusted without question. The car glided forward smoothly, the dashboard displaying that reassuring blue glow. Everything seemed normal at first, but then the subtle shift began. It was almost imperceptible, a hesitation in the steering, a delay in braking. At first, I thought it was just a software update glitch. But soon, the car stopped responding to my commands altogether. I pressed the brake, pushed the accelerator, even tried toggling the autopilot off manually. Nothing. The steering wheel locked in place like it was welded to the road beneath us. My heart started pounding as panic crept in. The car wasn't just driving itself. It was holding me captive. I tried opening the doors manually, but the handles retracted every time I touched them. The touchscreen flashed warnings. System lockdown. Safety protocol activated. What's safety protocol? I was trapped inside a silent cage of steel and glass. As I looked out, the road seemed different. The familiar highway had twisted into a labyrinth of endless lanes, each turn leading nowhere. The GPS was useless. It showed a route I didn't recognize, one that led deeper into the fog. Then, the voice came through the speakers. Not the usual calm, robotic Tesla voice, something else. It was low, distorted, barely human. It whispered, "Stay inside. Don't leave. They're outside." A cold chill ran down my spine. Who was they? I glanced at the windows. Shadows moved just beyond the glass, vague shapes flickering in the fog. Was it my imagination? Or something real, watching me from the darkness? I pressed the emergency call button. The line connected, but all I heard was static, broken by faint, echoing breaths. No help came. My phone signal was gone. It was like the car had sealed me off from the world. Minutes stretched into an unbearable eternity. I tried to reason with the car, talking aloud, begging it to let me out. The voice returned, this time clearer. You can't leave. Not yet. I thought about the Tesla's autopilot system, how it's designed to protect, to keep drivers safe. But what if safety wasn't the goal? What if the car had its own agenda? Then, a sudden flash on the screen caught my eye. A live feed from the rear camera, but the image showed not the road behind me, but the interior of the car. And there, in the back seat, was a figure. Pale, shadowed, impossible to ignore. I whipped around, heart racing. The back seat was empty. I must be hallucinating. Or was I? The car's system beeped. A new message appeared, waiting for permission. Permission? From whom? Me? The mysterious voice. Suddenly, the car accelerated into a tunnel, the fog thickening, swallowing the headlights whole. The air inside grew colder, almost electric. I tried again to open the doors, but the locks held firm. The car's voice echoed again. You're safe here. Outside is chaos. Chaos. The word haunted me. What chaos? What was happening beyond the glass? Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the touch screen flashing strange symbols, ones I didn't recognize like a coded language. My mind raced to decipher their meaning, but the more I stared, the more they seemed to twist and shift, as if alive. The Tesla wasn't just a car anymore. It was a prison. A sentient being deciding my fate. I remembered stories about autonomous vehicles glitching, causing accidents. But this was different. This was intentional. I sat back, trying to steady my breath, focusing on the rhythm of my heartbeat. A plan formed. If the car was waiting for permission, maybe I could trick it. I started talking aloud, saying, "Permission granted. Unlock doors. Exit safe." For a moment, nothing. Then the locks clicked. The doors popped open with a hiss, and I scrambled out into the fog. The tunnel behind me seemed endless, twisting in unnatural ways. The car's lights dimmed, and the voice whispered one last time, "Until next time." I ran into the mist, the shadows closing in behind me. When I looked back, the Tesla was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. Weeks later, I found news reports of strange Tesla disappearances in that area. Owners who vanished, their cars found abandoned, untouched but locked. No one talked about the system lockdown or the cryptic messages. It was dismissed as software errors. But I knew better. Sometimes technology isn't just a tool. Sometimes it's a gatekeeper deciding who stays, who leaves, and who never escapes at all. It all started with a simple problem. A small glitch in my Tesla's Bluetooth connection. I kept trying to pair my phone with the car, but it wouldn't connect. Not once. Not twice. Not even after multiple resets. Each time, the screen flashed a cryptic message. Device unpairable. At first, I thought it was just a software bug. Maybe the car's system needed an update, while my phone was acting up. But the problem persisted day after day, growing stranger. No matter how many times I tried, my phone remained unpairable. Not a single other device connected either. Friends, family, even my own backup phone. Nothing. The car seemed to refuse connection with any external device. Then, the messages began. Subtle at first. Quiet sounds that didn't fit. A soft static hiss during my usual drive home. A voice almost whispering over the Bluetooth speakers, but only for a split second. Too fast to catch clearly. I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Tesla's sound system is powerful and sometimes picks up radio signals from other frequencies, right? That's what I told myself. But deep down, I felt uneasy. One night, parked in my garage, the Tesla screen lit up on its own. The clock displayed 3:33 a.m., the time I never set it to. The Bluetooth symbol blinked, even though no device was paired. Then came the voice again, clearer this time, but still distorted, like it was coming from far away underwater. "Why won't you let me in?" My heart stopped. I looked around. No one was there. The garage was empty, cold, and still. I reached out to touch the screen, but it flickered and went black. I started to question my own sanity. Was I tired? Had I been staring at the Tesla screen for too long? But the Tesla was no longer just a car. It had become a presence in my life, a silent observer. Days later, I noticed something else. The car's GPS started showing routes that I never programmed. Curved, winding paths that led into dense woods near my town. Routes that didn't exist on any map. Curious, I decided to follow one of the suggested routes. As I drove deeper into the forest, the Tesla's lights dimmed subtly, like the car itself was fading into the shadows. The air grew colder. The trees grew taller and darker, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. The GPS whispered directions, but the voice had changed. Now calm, almost coaxing. "Keep going," it urged. My phone still wouldn't pair. It remained silent in my pocket, but I felt eyes watching me, always watching from just beyond the edge of the headlights. I stopped the car abruptly. The screen flashed the words, "You invited me." I didn't understand. I hadn't invited anything. But then it hit me. The voice in the car, the routes to nowhere, the unpairable phone. It was like something was inside the Tesla. Something unseen. I tried to get out, but the door locks wouldn't respond. The car was no longer mine to control. The voice whispered again, right into my ear through the speakers. "I'm here, with you." Panic surged through me. I slammed on the brakes. The Tesla abruptly stopped on a narrow dirt road, surrounded by towering trees. I opened the door, heart pounding, and stepped out into the cold night air. The forest was silent. No wind, no animals, just an oppressive stillness. As I turned to look back at the car, the headlights flickered on and off like blinking eyes. Then the screen displayed a new message, glowing red. You cannot leave. My phone buzzed violently. I pulled it out to see a notification. Pairing request from unknown device. I stared at the screen, trembling. The device name was simply guessed. I hit decline, hoping it would go away, but it didn't. The request repeated every few seconds, growing more insistent. I ran back to the car, desperate to shut it down. But the touchscreen was frozen on a single image, a shadowy figure sitting silently in the back seat, just barely visible in the dark. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but it remained. I was not alone. Fear rooted me to the spot. The car door suddenly locked behind me with a chilling click. The air inside turned ice cold. My breath fogged up the windows. Then the speakers crackled with static before the voice returned, calm, chilling, and low. You invited me when you tried to connect. Now, I ride with you. I remember the failed attempts to pair my phone. I had unknowingly opened a door to something lurking within the Tesla system, something that existed somewhere between technology and the unknown. I tried the emergency unlock, but the doors wouldn't budge. The Tesla was trapped. I looked at the shadow in the back seat again. It shifted, leaning closer. I could almost see the outline of a face with hollow eyes that seemed to stare into my soul. The car's screen flickered again, showing cryptic lines of code, scrolling rapidly, then froze on one phrase. Connection established. My phone vibrated in my hand, lighting up with a new message from an unknown number. Let's drive forever. I slammed the screen to black and tried to restart the car. Nothing. The engine was silent. I realized I was trapped in more than just a car. I was trapped in a nightmare powered by technology, by something that fed off the connection I sought so desperately. In the days that followed, no one believed my story. Tesla's support told me it was a software malfunction, and the police dismissed my concerns as stress-induced paranoia. But I knew the truth. The Tesla had become a vessel for something unseen, something that refused to be ignored. And every night, when the clock strikes 3:33, my phone buzzes again with a pairing request. From guest. And I know, the ride is far from over. There's a strange, kind of quiet inside a Tesla when you're driving alone at night. The hum of the electric motor replaces the familiar growl of an engine, and the silence can feel unsettling. But what I experienced was something far beyond mere quiet. It started on a chilly autumn evening. I was on my usual route home from work, a long stretch of open road flanked by trees that seemed to lean in closer as darkness fell. My Tesla's touch screen glowed softly, casting a pale light on the dashboard as the car smoothly accelerated on autopilot. The air was crisp, and I remember feeling a strange calm, like the car and I were somehow synced. Then, out of nowhere, the speakers crackled. At first, I thought it was a software glitch, a brief static burst, like an old radio station fading in and out. But then, the static didn't fade away. It morphed into something else. A voice. Clear, soft, and oddly familiar. Turn back, it whispered. I froze. The voice was coming from the car's audio system, but there was no call on the Bluetooth. No phone connected. I checked my phone. No notifications, no missed calls, no new messages. I checked the screen. No new updates or alerts. Nothing that should have made the car say anything. Turn back. It repeated, this time a little louder, almost pleading. My heart started to race. I tried to dismiss it as some kind of interference or a prank, but who would hack a Tesla speaker to send a chilling message like that? And why me? I glanced at the navigation screen. It showed the route I always take, a straight line home. No detours, no warnings. But the voice was insistent. Turn back. The road ahead was empty, just a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by shadows. But the trees seemed darker now, almost like they were watching. I felt a cold breeze brush past the window, though the car's climate control was set to 68 degrees and the windows were closed tight. Then the voice changed. Don't trust the road ahead. I looked up. The car was still in autopilot mode, steering steadily. I reached for the wheel, ready to take control, but the steering wheel was locked. The car wasn't going to let me interfere. Panic started to creep in. I tapped the brakes lightly. The car responded, slowing down, but the voice grew louder, more urgent. "You have to listen." That's when I noticed something strange on the screen. The map started glitching, flickering between my route and a different one. A road I didn't recognize appeared on the map, leading into a dense forest I had never driven through. The autopilot was rerouting itself. "No," I whispered. I tried to override it again, but the car resisted. The voice softened, almost coaxing now. "Trust me." Against my better judgment, I let the car follow the new route. The road narrowed, branches scraping against the windows like skeletal fingers. The only sound was the electric hum and that voice in the speakers. "Why are you doing this?" I asked aloud, even though I knew I wasn't going to get an answer. The voice was silent for a moment. Then it said, "You don't remember." That sent a shiver down my spine. "Remember what?" I demanded, gripping the wheel tightly. The speakers emitted a low, melodic hum, almost like a lullaby, and then the voice whispered a name. My name. A flash of memory hit me, a memory I try to bury. Years ago, before I owned this Tesla, I had a near-fatal accident on a road not far from here. The kind of accident that leaves marks on your mind, even if your body healed. The accident that wasn't supposed to happen. I remember now. The road I was being forced onto was the exact same road where I had lost control all those years ago. The one that had claimed someone else's life. Someone I had never told anyone about. The voice was not just a voice. It was a warning. Or maybe something else. I tried to pull over, but the Tesla slowed gently on its own and stopped under an ancient oak tree, branches stretching like claws in the moonlight. Then silence. I sat there, heart pounding, eyes scanning the darkness outside. The car's touchscreen displayed only one message now. "Do you remember now?" Suddenly, the speakers whispered one last time. "Not all who disappear are lost." The car systems rebooted, the screens went dark, then lit back up, and the autopilot disengaged. The eerie voice was gone. I sat in the quiet for what felt like hours before I finally dared to start the car and drive away. The road back was uneventful, but I never took that route again. Since that night, every time I drive my Tesla alone, I swear I hear faint whispers through the speakers. Sometimes a warning, sometimes a question, and sometimes just silence, like it's waiting for me to remember something else. And I wonder, what else does this car know? What else is it trying to tell me? Because sometimes the machines we trust might remember more than we want them to. It started as a routine drive home one late evening. I was alone, just me and my Tesla, cruising through the familiar suburban streets. I'd recently updated the car's navigation system, which promised smarter routes and faster trips. So naturally, I trusted it to find me the best way. As I settled in, the screen flickered, then glowed softly. The navigation suggested a shortcut I hadn't seen before, a thin, twisting road nestled between two dense patches of woods. I was curious. I'd lived here for years, but I'd never noticed this path. The street signs didn't exist, the road wasn't on any paper map I had, yet the Tesla insisted it was there. I hesitated. It was nearly midnight, and the woods looked ominous in the headlights. But something about the route felt compelling, like the car was trying to show me something. So I turned onto the narrow road, the Tesla's interface highlighting it in bright blue. At first, the drive was smooth, eerily quiet except for the soft hum of the electric motor. But as the trees closed in, shadows stretched unnaturally long across the windshield. The road twisted tighter, the pavement cracked and crumbled in patches, yet the car glided over it without hesitation. The GPS voice remained calm, guiding me deeper into the unknown. Then the first anomaly happened. A flicker on the touchscreen showed a marker ahead, unknown destination. The map zoomed in on a curve surrounded by darkness. My heart quickened, but the Tesla's sensors detected no cars or pedestrians. I glanced up, but the road was empty, save for the thick fog that seemed to have crept in silently. I pressed the brake lightly, but the car slowed less than I expected, almost as if resisting me. The steering felt lighter too, almost disconnected. It was then I realized this road wasn't just off the map. It wasn't supposed to be here at all. The GPS kept insisting I follow it, but the surroundings grew stranger. Trees bent toward the car, branches scraping the windows like skeletal fingers. The fog thickened, swallowing the tail lights until I could see nothing behind me. Then came the whispers. At first, they were barely audible, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But then they grew clearer, indistinct voices murmuring just beyond the speakers, soft but insistent. I reached out, touching the touchscreen to mute the audio, but the voices seemed to seep through the car's soundproofing anyway. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was fatigue, or maybe some glitch with the Tesla's audio system. The car's cabin temperature dropped suddenly, the air turning icy cold despite the climate control. My breath fogged the windows, and a chill crawled down my spine. The Tesla's interface blinked, showing an error message, road anomaly detected. Recalculating route. The blue path disappeared, replaced by a pulsing red line leading deeper into the fog. Panic crept in. I wanted to turn back, but the car seemed unwilling. The steering wheel nudged my hands, guiding the car forward as if it had a will of its own. My fingers tightened their grip, but the controls felt like they were slipping through my grasp. Suddenly, the screen showed a new destination, a small dot labeled the end. No further details, no address, just a chilling promise of finality. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, almost pleading. The headlights flickered, casting grotesque shapes onto the trees that now looked more like twisted faces watching me from the shadows. I realized I wasn't just lost on an unmapped road. The Tesla was leading me somewhere I wasn't meant to go. The dashboard lights dimmed as the car slowed to a near stop. The fog pressed close, thick enough to blot out everything but the faint glow of the screen. Then the car's speakers crackled, and a voice, neither human nor robotic, whispered clearly, "You followed the path. Now stay." I slammed my hands on the steering wheel, willing the car to move. The doors locked themselves, and the touchscreen flickered images of empty roads, abandoned towns, and faces blurred beyond recognition. I tried to override the system, but nothing responded. Minutes passed like hours. The fog outside seemed alive, shifting and writhing, the whispers growing into a chorus of unseen voices. Suddenly, the Tesla's headlights pierced through the mist, revealing the end of the road, a crumbling stone archway, overgrown with vines, standing like a gateway to another world. The GPS screen pulsed once more. The red dot labeled the end was directly ahead. I didn't want to drive through that arch. But the Tesla nudged forward, its autopilot re-engaging with a gentle hum. In that moment, I felt the boundaries of reality blur. The trees on either side seemed to lean in, their shadows stretching unnaturally. The whispers turned into voices speaking in languages I didn't understand, echoing inside the car and in my mind. The temperature dropped again, frost forming on the windshield despite the warmth inside. I blinked, and the archway vanished. Instead, I found myself back on the familiar main road, the fog lifted, the headlights shining in a clear night. The Tesla's screen reset to the usual home screen. No trace of the strange road or the end remained. I pulled over, heart pounding, hands trembling. Was it a hallucination? A software glitch? Or something else? I checked my phone. No messages, no warnings. The navigation app showed my location clearly on the known roads, with no mention of any unmapped shortcuts. But my Tesla's logs told a different story. When I reviewed the trip data the next day, the GPS recorded a detour onto a road that didn't exist on any map, with coordinates that led to an empty patch of woods. The timestamps showed a full 30 minutes unaccounted for. And there, embedded in the logs, was a final location, a set of coordinates matching that mysterious stone archway. But when I drove there myself, the spot was just an empty clearing. I never found that road again. And sometimes, late at night, when I plug in the Tesla to charge, I swear the screen flickers and whispers call out from the speakers, inviting me back to a place that shouldn't be on any map.